Hi there. So, if you're a 10th grader, watching this video is probably the best decision you could have made today. Why? Well, because it's that time of the year again when 18 lakh students just like yourself have to sit in for their 10th board exams. You guys are in the big leagues now, which is why you're going to need all the help you can get. And I have the perfect advice for you today. BYJU'S is proud to present to you our very own 30-day plan to ace your board exams. Yes, you heard that right. Just 30 days and you'll be all set to make mincemeat of your board exams. I know, you're probably thinking, how on earth can I cover a year's worth of portions in just 1 month? Well, stay tuned for the rest of the video to find out. I promise you that the next 20 minutes will help to shed a new light on the way you approach your exams. No matter how tough the exams are, our 30-day plan is going to help you knock it out of the park. And you know what they say? When the going gets tough, the tough get going. So let's get going and dive right in, shall we? Okay. So, like any other master plan, ours is also divided into different stages. 5 of them, in fact. So let me give you a brief overview of what they are before I get into any sort of detail. Now, the first stage is preparing a study schedule for yourself. Of course, one that is comfortable for you, but at the same time ensures that you get through all your portions. Then, stage 2 is all about how to study smart. You know, the founder of Microsoft and one of the world's richest men, Bill Gates, he once said that it is better to work smart rather than work hard. And there's no reason why this shouldn't work in case of studying as well, right? So we'll guide you on how to study smart. We will help you to reduce stress, become more efficient, and produce optimal results. Now, we know that every subject is different and each will have their own nuances, right? So, stage 3 takes this into consideration and provides you with guidelines on the best ways to prepare for each subject. So, we've identified what's common and what's different across all the different subjects so that you don't have to. Then we have stage 4, which deals with the things that you should focus on during D-Day. Are there any practices that will help you score better? See, we know that the mark that you get doesn't only depend on how well you studied, right? It also depends on how well you transfer that knowledge onto paper. So, I will give you the secrets to writing an A+ grade paper. And finally, stage 5 details all the do's and don'ts that one needs to keep in mind while preparing for and writing the board exams. Now, a lot of thought went into these so that you can have a clear idea of how to approach your exams. All right then, I think it's time we got down to brass tacks. Let's start with stage 1, which is preparing an effective study schedule. Now, what makes a schedule effective? And how can you make sure that you stick to it each and every day? Well, let's take a look, shall we? Okay, so the key is to have a goal-oriented study schedule. What does this mean in the real world? Let me explain. Set fixed goals that you are sure that you can achieve every day. Then tailor your study schedule to meet these goals. Now, after giving it some serious thought, I finally decided upon a 3-session schedule that you can adopt to maintain a healthy pace of learning. So, what does this schedule look like? Now, one thing that you can do is have study sessions like you would take your medicines. Okay, you probably didn't get that. Let me explain myself better. Divide your study time into 3. 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and then you can have the final session post-dinner. Now, you're probably wondering, how is this going to help, right? See, each of these sessions are different from each other. The morning session can be thought of as a brain-teasing session. So at this time, you're fresh, you've had a good night's sleep, and this time is perfect for you to focus on the more numerically demanding subjects. So then, which subjects do you think are suited for the morning session? Yes, subjects like maths and science, which require you to solve a lot of problems, they are the perfect candidates for the morning session. All right, then what about the afternoon session? Well, you can reserve the afternoon sessions for the more memory intensive subjects. Subjects where you have to by heart a lot of stuff, right? So these include all your language subjects as well as social studies, which require you to memorize a whole lot of dates and names, right? Okay, that's the afternoon session. But then why do we need to have a session post dinner, right? I mean, I always feel like going straight to bed after I've had a nice dinner. I understand. But you know what you can do? You can use this session to revise all of the things that you've learned on that day. What happens with revising is that revising helps you to cement all the new information inside your head so that you don't forget it when you wake up the next day or, in fact, even the day after that. Now, during revision, you don't need to go through each and every line that you studied. Just have a quick glance through the points that you feel are important and you're good. All right, so knowing just how important revisions can be, I've actually gone through the trouble of listing down everything that you need to have a second look through. Now, these include things like all the important formulae you learned in science and maths, all the different theorems that you came across in maths. Please make sure that you don't get them mixed up. It is easy to mix them up sometimes, right? Then, all the reactions that you learned in chemistry. Please take special care to memorize all the correct compounds and elements. Then, all the important diagrams of circuits and organisms that you might have come across. All the dates and the names in social studies. And finally, all the maps that you might have learned in geography. See, it never hurts to go through each of these a second or even a third time. As I said, revision isn't about going through each and every sentence in the textbook. Study smart and pay attention to the things that matter. All right, but knowing when to study and what to study isn't enough. A good schedule should also take into consideration time management. This is very, very important. But the question is, how should you divide your valuable time? See, in terms of subjects, it's not like all of us are equally skilled at each and every subject, right? I mean, usually we have our strong points as well as our weak points. So, for example, you may be really good at math, but you might find it hard to study social studies. But then there might be someone else out there who feels exactly the opposite way. So, it clearly doesn't make sense for you to spend equal amount of time for all the subjects. So, you know what helps? First, try to identify your strong and weak suits. Then dedicate more time to your weaker subjects. So this will help you to get a firm grasp of the things that you find it harder to learn. Now, dedicating more time for any particular subject will mean naturally that you have less time to spend on the other ones. But that's okay if these are subjects are the ones that you're good at, right? So you can quickly go through everything and still have a thorough understanding of everything that was taught. Now, the trick over here is to find a perfect balance between your strong and your weak points, or your strong and weak subjects. Don't spend so much time on your weaker subjects that you find yourself having little to no time for your stronger ones, right? So, a well-planned schedule with efficient time management can help you find the right balance. In fact, that is why it's so important to prepare a study schedule before you actually go wade into all the different portions, right? Okay, so that's all I have to offer for stage 1, but we've only just begun. Now, let us take a look at what stage 2 has to offer. So tell me, why do you think it's a good idea to study smart instead of studying hard? I mean, I'm sure that you've heard your parents and teachers saying hard work is the only path to success. And they'd actually be right, you know. But I'm here to tell you that there is more than one way to do it, especially when it comes to acing your exams. Are you intrigued? Okay, I won't keep you in the dark for any longer. Listen carefully to what I'm about to say. Tell me, have you ever heard of the great Richard Feynman? He's actually one of the greatest physicists to ever walk this earth. But more than that, he was a brilliant teacher. He developed what came to be known as the Feynman technique of learning. Have you ever heard of it? Okay, don't worry if you haven't, because I have summarized the entire thing into 3 simple steps to make things easier for you. Now, let's suppose that you want to learn something new. what is the best way to approach the subject? Well, it actually turns out that it's a simple 3-step process. So, step number 1 is choosing a topic. Write down everything that you currently know about that particular topic. When you come across new information, add it to your notes. Then, step 2. Now, this may sound a bit strange, but it's actually one of the most effective ways of learning, So, after you're done learning, try teaching everything that you've learned to a child. It need not even be a real child. I mean, it could be an imaginary child as well. Now, if you can do this, this means that you have a good grasp over everything that you've learned. But suppose while you're explaining it, you stumble across gaps in your knowledge. Jot these areas down so that you can refer back to them later on. And this way you can zero in on the concepts that you're not entirely sure about. Then, after you're done, hit the books again until you're sure about them. And you can relate them to the child without any hiccups. And that's it. You won't know just how effective Feynman's technique is until you actually give it a try for yourself. It works like a charm. I mean, I know I have tried it. You should try it too. And with that, we're done with stage 2. Hope you put Feynman's legacy to good use. But now it's time we moved on to stage 3, where we will be trying to identify the differences between all the subjects that you have to learn. Yes, we are at stage 3. Okay, so here we will be discussing certain guidelines that will help you breeze past all the different kinds of information that you are introduced to at this age. So let's get right into it. Why don't we start with the one and only mathematics? This is way different from anything you might be learning at the moment. So I think it's a good idea to have a solid approach to learning the subject. Now, what I'm going to tell you now is the BYJU'S approach to learning maths. So, the first thing that you need to do is take a look at the weightage and the section-wise distribution of each topic. This is very, very important. This helps you identify the parts that you need to spend more time on. Now, this point is common for all subjects, so please make sure you don't miss out on doing it. Okay? Then, second point is to revise all theorems and derivations. Now, these can sometimes get easily mixed up, right? Especially when you have a ton of them. So, correlating theorems and derivations is a really good way to keep track of all of them. And while you're revising, please make sure that you go through all the formulae and the identities as well. Mathematics is full of them. So, it's always advisable to keep a separate sheet for all these formulae and identities. Okay, now tell me, what is another characteristic of mathematics? Yes, it has a wide range of standard values like the trigonometric ratios and such. So please make sure that you revise these as well. Now, another thing that is actually common for all the subjects is to have a go through the previous year's question papers. Okay, this is very, very important because this will help you understand what kind of questions are normally asked and how each part is segregated. And that's enough about mathematics for the time being. Why don't we move on to science? Now, tell me, what do you need to keep in mind while learning science? Okay, let's take it one by one. Let's start with physics. Now, like I said earlier, first of all, be aware of the weightage and the section-wise distribution of each topic. This is very important no matter what subject you're learning, right? Then, talking about physics, one thing that you can do when it comes to physics is practice a whole lot of numerical based questions. I mean, you never know what type of question they ask, so it's always better to be familiar with all of them. And since we're talking about physics, I can't urge you enough to practice drawing those ray diagrams. I mean, you never know where you might be dealing with one of those, so it's always better to practice drawing a lot of them. And when it comes to all the different machines that you need to learn about, pay special attention to their working principles because this is what is most often asked. And like with mathematics, please make sure that you refer to the previous year's question papers as well. All right, let us next move on to chemistry. Now, like I said before, it is always a good idea to have a knowledge about the weightage and the section-wise distribution of each of the topics. This is very, very important no matter what you're studying. All right. Now, talking about chemistry, one thing you have to pay extra attention to in chemistry is balancing all the chemical equations. And there are a lot of them, right? Now, 10th grade chemistry, we know, is mostly based on carbon, right? So focus more on carbon compounds and their nomenclature containing the functional groups. All right. Next point is to make sure that you prepare notes for all the reactions involving conversion compounds. And finally, understand and memorize the modern periodic table with the electronic configuration of the first 20 elements. We know this is very, very important. Do all this and you'll be set for chemistry as well. Now, what's left? Yes, biology. Absolutely right. Okay, so coming to biology, we first have our usual stuff, which is what? Proper knowledge about the weightage and the section-wide distribution. Please always do this. Now, in biology, please keep a track of all the functions performed by the body parts such as the brain, the heart, and so on. Right? Next, please revise Mendel's experiments and understand the traits inheritance in detail. Now, biology, we know, involves a lot of sketching, right? So make sure that you practice drawing all the diagrams along with the right labels. This is very important. And like always, please make sure that you refer to the previous year's question papers as well. All right, so we're done with science and math. What comes next? Language subjects, right? So let us see how we can prepare for these as well. Now, I don't even need to tell you about the first step because you guys are pros now. All right, let's move on. Now, when it comes to language subjects, make sure that you revise all the grammatical rules. Also, please try practicing a ton of grammar questions. These are very important. Also, you should definitely know the formats for essay and letter writing like the back of your hand. Okay, also, practicing the descriptive textbook questions is always a good idea. You never know, but sometimes the exact same questions could be asked in the exam as well. So make sure you do this. And like always, please make sure that you refer to the previous year's question papers to get a rough idea about how the exam is going to be. Next on our list is social studies. Now, this subject demands a lot of memorization, so please be sure that you're on your feet when you study for this. And when it comes to the guidelines, I'm just going to skip over the first point because you know this really, really well by now. All right, now social studies, we know, includes a lot of long answer type questions, right? So please make sure that you remember all these answers in the form of points. Write it down in points, in fact, because what this does is that it will help you to write down everything that matters. And this will help you to score maximum marks. Now, another thing that we can do when it comes to social science is design a chart for yourself with all the important dates. Make sure you flip through this often just to make sure that you're familiar with everything that it contains. And then we know, of course, that geography contains a lot of maps, right? So practice drawing out these maps whenever you can. In fact, these are exactly like diagrams, just with an added number of labels. And again, I don't need to tell you how important it is to refer to the previous year's question papers, right? Okay, so then that's all the subjects dealt with. But, there is one other thing I would recommend as a guideline. This applies for all the subjects that we've talked about. Please give yourself enough time to attend a considerable number of mock papers. This is very, very important. Why is this important? I'll tell you why. So, mock papers helps you get acquainted with the testing environment. And this is very important. You'll get familiar with the formats and, of course, the pressure one feels while sitting down for the final exams. In fact, I feel like this is the perfect way to soften the blow of sitting down for your board exams. It helps you practice, right? Also, attending mock papers will help you formulate strategies for writing the real exam. Now, you remember that we spoke that time management was so important while preparing a study schedule. So, mock papers help you do the same thing while writing the exam so that you don't find yourself running out of time during the real thing. And finally, mock papers help you to avoid making the same mistakes over and over again. You can get a sense of where you're going wrong and you can work towards improving those specific areas. So, mock tests are really, really important. But wait a minute. Simply attempting mock papers isn't enough, you know. Please make sure that you properly analyze them as well. Now, you're probably wondering how this could help. Let me tell you how. First thing that you can do is check your score after writing the mock exam. So, some students, they simply fail to look up their scores and thus the analysis goes down the drain. So, always check your scores. Now, analyzing these papers also helps you to time your attempts and make sure that you finish the mock papers within the stipulated time. So when it's time for the real deal, you won't find yourself running out of time. I mean, believe me, there is nothing worse than not being able to write down the answers that you do really know, right? Okay, now next, try to figure out your performance in the major areas and also check which question took you the longest amount of time. So this will be a good second point to keep in mind. Also, you can try re-solving your test. Try solving the question paper once without any time constraints. See if you can understand how you have solved the paper in the first go and how you should have actually solved it. Identify the questions you missed out on and try to segregate your careless mistakes. So, re-solving your tests is very important. Then, check the solutions once again. This is where you finally look at the answer key, right? So, go through the problems that you could not solve and also check the ones that you could solve. Do the latter just for the sake of finding any hidden trick or tip that you could use during the real exam. And after your first mock paper, please draw out a strategy for your next one. Give yourself a series of directives or instructions to follow in the next exam and see how it goes. Also, make sure that you attempt that mock paper. See, it doesn't matter how many you attempt. Do as many as you can so that no question can surprise you when it's time for that real exam. All right? So by now, you should have a good idea about the preparatory guidelines that we follow to ensure to ace the exams. But is there something that you can do while you're writing that final exam? Turns out there is. And this is what stage 4 details. So let's go find out what the next stage has in store for us. All right, now over the next couple of minutes, I will tell you a few zero-hour tactics that you can use to breeze through your exams. Studying for your exams is one thing, definitely, but it only really matters what you actually write down during those crucial 2 or 3 hours, right? So, what can you do to ensure that your paper is perfect? All right, let's imagine that you're in the exam hall. You see the question, but you just don't have enough time to write down everything that you know. Trust me, there's no worst feeling. Now, one thing that you can do to ensure this doesn't happen is write your answers point by point. Now, this not only helps you save time, but actually also makes things easier for the person who's grading your paper. Also, try underlining the important lines so that the examiner knows straight away that you know your stuff. All right? Now, you have heard how the first impression is always the best impression, right? So, just imagine how the person grading your paper would feel if he or she finds your paper full of scribbles and write-overs like this. Don't do this. Even if you make a mistake, use a whitener or just draw a simple line over the wrong words so that your paper does not look cluttered like this. You can actually make it easy for the examiner to grade your paper by keeping it neat like this, and this will ensure that they don't reduce any marks unnecessarily because they can't understand what's happening, right? But those are not the only 2 things that you can do during D-Day. There are a number of other things that you can do. What are they? Listen closely. Make sure that you put the first 15 minutes of your exam to good use. Go through all the questions in the paper and mark the ones that you're sure you can solve. Mark easy questions. Right? Next, prioritize your attempts, which means what? Attempt all the questions you marked in the first 15 minutes before you move on to the ones that you're not sure of. This simply means attempt easy ones first. Right. Now, also, keep in mind all the careless mistakes that you made while attempting the mock papers. Please make sure that you don't repeat these during the real exam. And in fact, this is why mock papers are so important. Then, when it comes to questions that you're not entirely sure of, try writing down all the steps that you are aware of. Each step will fetch you valuable marks, so each of these steps counts. And while doing all of this, please make sure that you keep an eye on the watch. I mean, don't spend an excessive amount of time on any single question. Whenever you feel like you've spent more than enough time on a question, move on to the next one. Otherwise, you'll find yourself not having time to attempt all the questions, which we don't want, right? Speaking of which, please do try and attempt all the questions in the question paper. See, in the board paper, every step fetches some marks. So, even if you don't know the entire process, so let's say that your answer is incorrect. Even in all these scenarios, if you have attempted the question, you will definitely get some marks for the working process. So, do that. And that's everything you can do while writing the actual exam. Also, please make sure that you're not under pressure and you approach the exam with a free and open mind. I mean, there's no point worrying over it once you're inside the exam hall, right? But then again, if you're an avid BYJU'S app user, you won't need to worry in the first place. You will be able to breeze past every question because we cover the A to Z of everything you guys need to learn. All right. Now it's time we moved on to the final stage. We need to understand the do's and don'ts while preparing for and attempting your board exams. So, during the next few minutes, I will explain to you the practices that you should adopt in order to make your life easier. I'll also fill you in on a couple of things you can avoid to make your life a little bit easier also. All right, shall we get into it then? Okay, now. First thing, do's. Take note of everything I'm about to say. Now, the first thing that you should do is make sure that you get enough sleep during the week of the exam. Very, very important. A rested mind is a good mind. Also, get some amount of physical exercise every day. You know what they say, right? A healthy body houses a healthy mind. Then please make sure that you do all your revisions properly because this is when you get to know both your strong and weak points. Also, very important, do not skimp out on your meals during exam time. Eat well because you're going to need all the energy you can get, right? Also, attempt as many mock papers as you can to get a feel of the testing environment. Also, please make sure that you take a healthy number of breaks in between all your study sessions. Study, but take breaks. And these are all the do's during the exam season. But there are also a couple of things that you need to avoid doing as well. So let's find out what they are. First and foremost, never underestimate the subject or the question paper. If you do so, you will be sure to slip up more than once during the exam. Careless mistakes more often than not crop up due to our ignorance. Also, please take care not to procrastinate because an idle brain is the devil's workshop. Don't put things off for tomorrow if you can do them today, right? I mean, later maybe never. So do it right now. All right. Now, another thing that you can definitely avoid is comparing yourself with others. Don't do this. Don't worry. Don't fret if your friend is a few chapters ahead of you. I mean, we all learn at different rates. So it's best to keep your head in the game and not worry about how others are doing. Your only competition is you. And finally, stay calm. Let's avoid the panic. I cannot stress this enough, but panicking just makes everything worse. Take a chill pill, keep a fresh mind during the final few days of the exams. It always helps. And guess what? That's all you need to do in order to prepare for your board exams in under 30 days. I hope that you found everything that I said useful. Please make sure that you visit the BYJU'S Learning app in order to have that extra edge. We have tons of content that is sure to put you ahead in the race. On that note, I'd like to wish you guys the very, very best for your exams. I'm sure you will ace all of them. So worry not. And also, I'm going to see you soon. But till I see you next time, don't forget to stay safe and stay awesome. Keep learning. Ciao.